right, that's the intro to the Deftones song Entombed. So I started with that to prove a simple point, that tapping is not always about just shredding and playing as fast as you can. If you didn't see me play that, you might not have even have thought that that was a tapping intro. So let's demystify tapping right off the bat for someone who's maybe not familiar with it yet or is just trying to learn tapping for the first time. It is simply a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs with your right hand. A lot of people use their first finger. I use my middle finger. I like to have the pick hooked under my pointer finger so I can still maintain control of the pick if I need to get back to it fairly quickly in the same song. But what I want to do with my middle finger is create an effect of hammer-ons and pull-offs. So then it becomes a matter of necessity. If you have an interesting idea in your head, a lick or some kind of a pattern, and you want to create some wide legato moves, which is basically just that smooth, fluid sound that you get with hammer-ons and pull-offs, you can't cover that distance with all the fingers just from your left hand. Then simply by using at least one of the fingers of your right hand, you have now extended the range of what is possible with the hammer-ons and the pull-offs. You start to create a style of playing that is much easier for a piano player. A piano player doesn't have to worry about his or her entire right hand being for the pick and being for the rhythm section. They can use their right hand to do all sorts of melodic flourishes and lines and sequences, but with the guitar player, your left hand is almost doing all of that work exclusively. So when you start to do right hand tapping, you are starting to think about music the way a piano player would. For example, if I wanted to play an A minor triad quickly and smoothly on one string, I would want to bring in the right-handed tapping technique, and it would sound something like this. If I wanted to create that same exact A minor triad on one string with just my left hand, it would sound something like this. Not that that's bad, but it's a totally different sound because now I have no choice but to slide to that final interval in the triad. Not to mention I'm also picking the first two notes. So you're getting a totally different timbre on the execution of that A minor triad. You're getting a lot of percussive elements with the pick and then also the slide. You can make an argument that a very aggressive sliding sound also kind of adds some percussive element. You're hearing the resistance of the frets as you move from, in this case, the 8th fret to the 12th fret, and that might not be a sound that you want to hear. You might want more of that fluid legato style. So that is one of the main reasons why you would invoke right-handed tapping. So let's go back to that Entombed intro. Could you get that same melody combination without tapping? Yes, you could. So first of all, it's harder physically. There's a lot more fingers being used. You need a lot more dexterity in your left hand to pull off that kind of a melody. Not that that should be a deterrent for doing it, but that is one of the obvious factors. The other obvious factor is because there's a lot of jumps in the octave range, I have to do a lot of string skipping. And that is a challenge on your right hand, your picking hand, if you're not used to doing a lot of string skipping. I can make it a little bit easier if I invoked some hybrid picking. So for example, I could use my middle finger to pluck the skipped string, the higher notes in that melody, something like this. So physically, that might make it easier for me to have to deal with string skipping, but it's still the same result, pretty much, even though when you finger pick, it is a little bit of a softer attack compared to an actual pick, but still, you're getting a very percussive sound to all of the notes. So timbre is very important, the tonal quality of the note that you're striking. Here's now the difference back to back between the actual tapping intro and the way I was just playing it. The first version, when I'm doing a lot of string skipping, even though the notes might be the same when I'm comparing the tapped note to the picked note, the tapped note is still on the same string as the lower part of the melody. But the picked notes are on the high E string. The high E string is a thinner gauge string than the G string. So it's a nuance, but right off the bat there is a tonal inconsistency with the melody. So the tapping adds to that smoothness if all of the notes are on the same physical string. So remember, tapping is great, but tapping is not always synonymous with an Eddie Van Halen style shred or any of the other shredders that you might listen to. It can be utilized for speed because the resistance of picking is not there, so you don't have to worry about being mechanically flawless and picking every single note a million miles an hour. You can just tap a note a million miles an hour. But remember, all you're really doing at the end of the day is a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs with your right hand, and you should use that for all sorts of benefits. The melodies can sound nice and warm and smooth and fluid, and it kind of replicates the sound of a different instrument, sometimes like a saxophone player or something like that. So it's not all about the speed, it's about the tonal quality of that technique that you're using.